Hello, this is Mr. Morton from eReadingWorksheets.com. Today we're going to be talking about double negatives. What are negatives? Negatives are words that produce opposite meanings. For example, Mr. Morton is not boring. The word not is a negative word. It reverses the meaning of this sentence and produces the opposite of what it would without the word not. That hardly matters. The word hardly is also a negative word. It produces the opposite meaning. Try reading the sentence without the word hardly and see the effect that it has. You can't leave though. Here, the negative word not is hidden in the contraction can't, but it still functions as a negative, which means it reverses the meaning of this sentence. Here are some common negative words. There are no words, such as neither, no, none, not, nothing, nowhere, and nobody. And there are limiting modifiers, such as barely, hardly, never, rarely, scarcely. And there are negative contractions, where the not word or no word is hidden inside of another word with which it's contracted, such as can't, couldn't, didn't, doesn't, isn't, wasn't, and won't. The thing that all these negative words have in common is that they produce opposite meanings. Now, there's nothing wrong with using negative words, but using too many negative words in a single clause or phrase can be a problem. That's what we call a double negative. A double negative is when we use two or more negative words in a single clause or phrase. The problem with double negatives is that they create positive meanings. Here's an example. Mr. Morton isn't not boring. In this clause, we have two negative words. The first one reverses the meaning of the sentence, and then the second one brings it back to what it originally meant without any negative words. These negative words cancel each other out and become redundant. Our writing would be more clear if we remove them. That hardly doesn't matter. Again, we see two negative words canceling each other out and making our writing more confusing for readers and listeners. You can't never leave though. Each of these examples have two negative words. The first negative word changes the meaning of the sentence to the opposite, and then the second negative word reverts it back to its original meaning. Again, there's nothing wrong with using negative words, but you should avoid using double negatives. And why don't we use double negatives? Mainly because they confuse readers and listeners. For example, I ain't never turned down no pizza. Now the speaker may know what he or she is expressing, but it's going to be hard for readers and listeners to understand exactly what this person means. Do they mean that they don't turn down pizza? Or that they do turn down pizza? They like pizza? They don't like pizza? There are too many reversals in this sentence for the readers or listeners to follow and make clear sense of it. In addition to confusing our readers and listeners, using double negatives can sometimes confuse ourselves. You should avoid using double negatives because you might say something that you don't mean. For example, I don't want no pizza. While the speaker might be trying to say that he or she doesn't want pizza, the meaning of the sentence that he or she has just expressed is that he actually does want pizza. Let me read it with a different tonation. I don't want no pizza, meaning that he or she wants some pizza. The second no cancels out the first not in don't, and we're left with I do want pizza. The last reason why we should never use double negatives is because there's always an easier way to express a sentence. If you're finding yourself using multiple negatives, you should probably just rephrase the sentence in a simpler way using one or fewer negative words. For example, I never turned down pizza. That's a lot easier to understand than I ain't never turned down no pizza. You should also be aware of negative prefixes. Some modifiers, adjectives or adverbs, have built-in negative words. For example, dishonest, incapable, and unfair. Those prefixes, dis, in, and un, usually reverse the meaning of the adjective. So instead of a person being honest, being dishonest is the opposite of being honest. Instead of being capable, being incapable is the opposite of being capable. Instead of being fair, being unfair is the opposite of being fair. So you see how these adjectives have built-in negative words. This makes it easy to accidentally use a double negative, and you should always try to avoid accidental double negation. Here are some examples of accidental double negation using negative prefixes. Well, he isn't dishonest. It would be a lot easier just to say that the speaker is honest. Whatever the speaker is attempting to say, there's an easier way to say it. And right now, with the double negation, this sentence is difficult to understand. She won't be incapable. Again, we have double negation, which makes the sentence confusing. They aren't unfair. Boy, this sentence would be a lot more clear if there were just one negative word or fewer. In review, negative words reverse the meanings of sentences or clauses and produce opposite meanings. Double negation will reverse a sentence and turn it positive. Dis, un, in, and non are often negative prefixes that are already negating or reversing the meaning of a modifier. Be exceptionally careful if you're using modifiers that start with these prefixes. Lastly, avoid double negatives. It's confusing for readers and listeners, and there's generally an easier way to express what you are saying. I hope you learned something about double negatives today, and if you did, stop by ereadingworksheets.com or click the link in the description of this video for some great resources on double negatives and other topics concerning English grammar.